Miss Evolving here. Lovely to see you live on Facebook in my garden, which is why I'm in my garden, and I'm very grateful. I'll show you the sky, because it was raining this morning, and I thought, I'm going to have to be inside and show you some of my crystal collection, but no, I get to be out here in the midwinter sun. I mean, it's 12:30, and that's as high as the sun gets. You know, we're southerly enough that we notice that the days are quite short. But let me show you. I'm just going to walk in the garden here because the Luculia is flowering. And it's glorious. I love it. This is one of my favourite things. Sort of doesn't look like much, but I love these leaves. They're so luxurious. And you can see all the leaves have fallen off the cherry tree, except for a very few. And I raked them up the other day because I didn't want them to, I mean, it's not much of a lawn because it wasn't a lawn, it was a garden bed. But I raked them off because I didn't want to completely destroy whatever is there that passes for grass. Look, we've got iris growing up. I mean, it's a simple thing, but I love the tall spears of the leaves and how the light comes through them. And if I get up close, and if the camera will focus, which I hope it will. Come on, Gertie. There you go. Oh, it needs my hand there. You can see the light coming through it. And I just love that. And, you know, we've got the fuchsia with its flowers. I'm going to get closer to this one. I never get tired of this either. Oh, look. It's got a little dandelion fluff on it or something. Isn't it beautiful? I just love these plants. I'm very fond of them. And look, the winter bulbs. These are bluebells. They'll be flowering in a few weeks or I don't know how long. But it's all starting to happen, and this is the exciting part of the time in this garden, is when things start to sprout. And you realise, it's not just boring dead earth. It's got all these things in it, and they're starting to come up. So I love that. And yeah, this rose needs to be pruned. I haven't got around to it yet. But by and large, this is the front garden and it's tucked up for winter. And look, I've got my little shallots in here. And you think, why have I got all of these big sticks? Well, when you plant things in open soil, if you don't have big sticks, the cats come along and dig it up. And that's annoying. So I just, it's something I can do with the branches that are left after I've done my mulching. And look at this. This is coriander that's run to seed. And back there, you can see it more run to seed. I do let it go because we always want to be able to eat some, right? So this is a bed that's pretty scruffy, but it's been weeded and it's growing. And this, of course, is going to be a blaze of colour in a little while. These are the Spiraxis. They come up for spring, and the whole bed turns red when they flower. So I'm looking forward to that. And this is the garden. And I'll just show you a little bit more. I like this corner too. I'm just waiting for the live to come up on Facebook so my husband can share it for me. Bless him, it's really important. Look, let's have a look at the lichen that's growing on the magnolia. Hopefully the camera will focus on it. There you go. Look at that, isn't that fabulous? These are little things that we don't necessarily stop to enjoy. But it's like a little forest just growing on the trunk. And if I back out again, this is the corner. This is where it's all happening. And the kawa, as you can see, it's got a bit in the middle that's died. I need to cut it down hard and have it sprout again. But I just enjoy this. I enjoy that. That's one big fern in the back there. And it's beautiful. Oh, and look, last but not least, this is the white pompon, the violet, which is just so fabulous. Trying not to have the light glaring off it. There you go, you can actually see it properly now. And it smells so good. It's really heavily scented. I'll pick a little bunch of them. Getting a whiff now because I'm down close to the ground, but you can see it just covers itself with flowers. And they're fabulous, and it's a great ground cover. Although, as you can see, things sometimes do grow through it. Oh dear. That's life in a garden. Anyway, there it is. This is the world out here. And now I'm going to go inside and talk to you about how it is that we really can change, and how the 5% of us that is conscious actually has a way to get in to the 95% of us that isn't conscious and turn off the part of our brain that says, you can't do that. It's not possible. You've tried before. Remember this. Remember how that didn't work. Remember how everything went wrong the last 50 times. By the way, this is what it's been like inside my brain. And have something different come to you instead. So that's what I've been writing about today. Because I've been writing about alpha. Because I've been writing about brainwaves. Excuse me, just getting organised here. I've been writing about brainwaves because if you want to change, who you are and some aspect of your life that doesn't please you, or the way you feel about something or whatever, it turns out research shows us, researchers have found, and it's true, I've experienced this myself, that 95% of who we think we are by the time we are 35 is memorized. And it's not memorized in a part of us that we're aware of. We're not thinking, oh, I've memorized how to complain all day, or how to be sick, or how to be miserable. And we're certainly not thinking, I've memorized how to be happy. Hell, I didn't know how to be happy for such a long time. Hello, gorgeous being. It's lovely to see you on. It's lovely when you join me. I just love having you here. So we memorize who we think we are, and it's based upon all the experiences that we've had in our lives up until that point. And in our first 7 years, of course, I know it's you. In our first 7 years, our brain is in either delta or theta, and we just take everything in. It's like when you have a blank computer and you just build it and it's got all the hardware together, and you hit the on button, and when you turn that thing on for the first time, and I've seen it done because I watched my computer have its operating system installed many years ago now, you just get a black screen with a blinking cursor. There's no program in there for it to run. Hi, Carol. So in our first 7 years, basically, our brain and our body, it starts off running with the genetic inheritance that we've got from our parents and the experiences that we've had when we're inside our mum while we're growing, because we get memories, we get chemical memories, and we also get other kinds of memories that we make when we're inside our mother growing, and then we get born and our brain is running pretty slowly when we're born. It's like we're asleep with our eyes open, and then 2 years later our brain speeds up and we go into theta and we're in hypnosis all the time. And that's it. I mean, theta is the hypnotic state, and we need to be like that because we're just downloading software. It's like when you build a new phone, you just got to put all your apps on it. It doesn't happen that, it doesn't come with everything installed. You've got to do that. So our first 7 years, we're installing all the apps. We're installing the operating system. We're doing all the basic things. And the thing about that is that when you download an app, you don't get to say, I want this bit, but I don't want that bit. I don't like that part of the app. Leave that out. No, you get the app or you don't get the app. And it's the same thing when we are small and our brain is in those slow brainwave states. There is no filter on the information that's coming in. We just get everything that's around us. And there's a really good reason for that. Excuse me, I've got to reach the clock or I won't know what time it is and I'll witter on for too long. There's a really good reason for that, because whatever is most commonly happening in and around our body and our life, the people, the places, the experiences we have, we just need to be able to deal with that. And so if something's happening often, then we better learn how to deal with it. And there's no argument. We just need to have that information installed, It's like choosing the right language for your device. You're in a place where you speak English, so you better have English. If you're in a place where you speak Swahili, well, then you better have the programs that mean you can speak Swahili. So if you're in a happy environment, well, then you get the programs that allow you to thrive in a happy environment. If you're in a stressful environment, you get the programs that allow you to best survive a stressful environment. That's what those first 7 years are for, and that's why there's no filter. You just have to have that to survive being human. Once you get to about age 7, and it varies, can be a little sooner, a little later, something new happens inside a child's brain. The brain speeds up, by the way, from delta to theta because the child becomes more active and it's starting to walk and talk and interact with things and whatever. And there's just more information coming in. So the brain's got to go faster to process it. Around age 7, it goes faster again. And what happens, and I don't know why it's around that age, but I did have a look because you read articles and some of them say, between ages 5 and 8. But the research that I quickly skimmed over, I have determined not to become an expert. I'm just looking for what's most commonly said. The research that people refer to seems to say, and like brain scans, right? They did studies and scanned the brains of children to find out what's busy and what's not. And the brain goes from being in theta to being mostly in theta to mostly in alpha. I'm glad it's useful, Noah. I love knowing this information, believe me. It does that around age 7. And then it's so cool because then a child gets the ability to question, to analyze, to problem solve. And also, I discovered last week, to actually realize that other people and their feelings and their emotions are different from their own. Because there's no distinction. You don't really understand, which is probably why, when small kids are having a meltdown or whatever, it's just, I'm having my experience and I have no awareness of who you are or what you might be feeling about it. We only get that when we grow up. We only get that when the brain speeds up into alpha brainwaves. And alpha brainwaves are between 8 and 11, 12 cycles a second. So, it's a bit faster, 3 times as fast as when you're born, in fact. And with alpha, you get this critical facility that can start to question and say, hey, somebody said to me that I'm whatever, said something bad to me that I don't like. I don't agree with that. I think I'm this. They said I'm that, but I think I'm this. You actually get the ability to disagree. And you get the ability to start solving problems and figuring stuff out for yourself. And I talked more about that last week. So if you missed that and you're curious, go and find that video on YouTube. That's the easiest place to find it. And YouTube, just look for, Look for Oneness Evolving. That's me. You'll find my channel. Or holler if you can't find it and I'll send you a link. So, and also the videos, actually I should say, they're on my Patreon, right? I've got a Patreon page where I put all of this stuff, but there's also special things that I share with my patrons who support me there, and there's also special things that I share with people who follow me there that don't happen here. And it's about this process that I'm writing this content for a website that's to help people understand all this stuff better, because it is really useful and I love understanding it. So where was I? So if you didn't get that piece about the critical thinking and the analytical thinking that we get to be able to do after age 7, and the brain has to speed up to do that because it's more complicated. Because here we are, it's not just, when you're 2 you start walking and you start to talk and all of that. Imagine, here's a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old, whatever, and they're walking, they're talking with their friend, they are noticing everything that's going on in the world around them, whether they're really conscious of it or not. Their brain is processing all of that. They might be feeling hungry. They might be arguing with their friend or laughing with their friend. They might be talking together about something else that's going on over there. The brain has to process all these layers and layers and layers of different kinds of information all at once. It's so amazingly intricate and complicated what our brains do for us, and we just don't even realize. Oh my God. It's got to do all of that. Think of the hundreds of thousands of neurons that must be firing in concert to move the little body, to think about the emotions, to process all the sensory data from outside, to process the memories of the past and the anticipations of the future. All of that is amazing. And that's why the brain ultimately has to speed up from theta into alpha, because it's just got so much more work to do. So alpha, yes, you start to get the critical analytical mind that can disagree and analyze things. But I was sitting there, I sort of finished this and I tidied up some things, and there were bits that I'd taken from here and put up here because they belonged, and that's just the writing process. And then I thought, there's something missing. I've missed out a whole chunk of something, because I've listened to Joe Dispenza, who is the man from whom I've learnt so much and who's really inspired me to ultimately take this path. And I've heard him talk about the different brainwave states. And in alpha, I remember him, you see, I have his voice in my head. It's a creative state, right? When we're, like when you're lying in bed and you've slept in, you don't have to get up yet, and your mind is just sort of wandering, or you're really figuring out a problem, you're trying to figure something out or create something. You're in alpha, right? You're relaxed, but you're awake. You're not dozing off. That's theta. You're relaxed and you're awake and you're focused inward. The world is going by and you are paying no attention. And even more than that, if somebody wants to get your attention, they might have to really make a noise because you're totally focused. Yeah, it is more or less age 7, Carol, but it's interesting when you start poking around how people say different things, so I try not to assume, but yeah, thank you. It is the most commonly acknowledged age for going into alpha. I just didn't want to assume anything. So that's alpha, right? It's a really creative state. And I was thinking about, what does that mean for a child? And it does mean, when you're in theta and you're making up a story or playing a game, it's absolutely real. Well, you still make up stories and you still play games, but you're aware more. And I don't immediately at 7 wake up and think, oh my God, all my games are games and my stories are stories. But you start to become aware that they are stories instead of experiencing them as real, which is what theta is like. When you experience something in theta, it's real. You're living it. It's just completely, there. So that's alpha. It's very creative. And the interesting, amazing thing that I learned, which is what I wanted to talk about today, was kind of my hook for this episode, if you like. So I was thinking, well, what does alpha do? What's the deal with alpha? And I stumbled, as you do, well, I found this research paper that had been done, and it was a nice write-up. It wasn't all full of, academic speak. It was a well-written article about some researchers who'd done a study, and they'd given people tasks that required creativity. And I think it was just word association, but the way they organised it. You had to be creative. They had problems. And anyway, the point being that when they they ran the experiment 4 different times, and each time they did different things with the people's brains. They used a transcutaneous stimulation, electrical stimulation on the brain to encourage it to go into alpha brainwaves, and they stimulated different parts of the brain. And what they found was that there's an area on the right temporal lobe, there's an area in the right temporal lobe which is responsible for us remembering the obvious things, like these are keys, I'm sitting on a chair, this cushion is used for putting on my lap or behind my back. It's used for remembering obvious things that we assume about and we know about, and this is how it is. So we also use that part of our brain for thinking, well, I just never have enough money, and I'm just always sick, and I'm just always frustrated. I am this person. I am like this. This is the part of the brain that does that. But here's the thing. When this part of the brain has alpha waves in it, that part of the brain is suppressed. It's turned off. Those networks don't fire in the same way. Because what the experimenters found was that the people who were doing these tasks that required creativity, these problems required creativity to solve them, when they made this part of the brain go into alpha, they did better. They got better results. They were more creative. They had to make associations between words. And when this part of the brain was in alpha, they made the weirdest, wildest, wackiest, furthest, outest associations, because the normal associations weren't there. Just turned off. Gone. And I looked at skimmed over other things, and other people are referring to this, so it's not like some one-off thing. And I can marry that up to my own experiences in meditation, when I know that I've slowed my brain down, right? That's what I've learned how to do in my meditation with an open focus. It's a guided meditation that I do with Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations. And one of the things that I get to do is I open my focus which means paying attention to space that's all around me. And when you're paying attention to space that's all around you, you're not thinking about people or places or times or memories or what's coming tomorrow or anything like that. And you're also not thinking about all the things you think you know about yourself. And what happens when I get into these deep places and I've slowed my brain down enough that I'm in alpha or even in theta, and I can tell the difference between those two, they feel distinctly different. You know, there's a problem that I've been trying to work it out and I've been trying to figure out, or a feeling that I just can't get over, and it's like, and I take it in my meditation with the intention that I'm going to do something. And when I'm in that deep state, I get a download of information. It's like, oh, or it just changes. Because the part of me that is absolutely fixated on the problem and can't let go of it, in my conscious awareness, the 5% of me that's aware, that 5% can't change the 95% that's unaware. But when I, when I can slow down my brain waves, that unconscious part of me is more accessible, and I can actually create change. I know I'm not going into detail about how that works, because that is down the track. I'm still just explaining brainwaves, but the point I want to make is that because you remember the programs, the operating system, and the apps that we use to run ourselves, like a little device or a big device, depending on how you think about it, they're installed, a lot of them, in our first 7 years. And then after that, it's like we don't stop installing things, but that's kind of like the basic operating system and the basic programs you put on, and then you add more stuff on top. And you're consciously aware of a lot of the stuff that you put on top because you go to school and you learn this, and and it's like one of the things I wrote about, when you're small, you may believe in the boogeyman and be really scared. And then as you grow up intellectually, you understand that the boogeyman is not real, and yet you're still afraid of the dark. Because that fear of the dark is something that's memorized in your body. Your body just goes, and your brain just goes, oh, it's dark, and I'm on my own. I'm scared. There's no boogeyman now. But the memory is unconscious, and it sits in the brain and the body. And you have to get into the brain and the body and those unconscious systems to change those memories. And alpha is kind of the doorway. It's the first doorway. I'm talking to you in beta at the moment. Most of us run around all the time in beta because that's what grown-ups do. But if you're going to change the 95% of you that's conscious, beta is a 5% that's conscious, right? Alpha is both the conscious mind, the 5%, and it's also the doorway to the 95%. So if you can learn how to get your brain from beta, busy, awake, interacting with the world, paying attention to all the information outside you, and slow your brain waves down and turn inward. Just shutting your eyes, by the way, suppresses the visual part of the brain and immediately helps you get closer to alpha. There's still often a lot of chatter in your head. I find that the thoughts come, the voices, blah, blah, blah. I have to work to slow my brain down. But when I do that, alpha is the doorway. And once I start getting into the deeper levels of alpha and even into theta, I'm actually working in my unconscious operating system and those apps that have been running and stopping me from changing and stopping me from creating the person I want to be. And that's the important thing that I wanted to explain, that alpha suppresses our memory of who we are. And so we can create a new memory. And I did it this morning, right? I do it most days. I just got to check. I got my little list and I've ignored it all day. But I think I've talked about everything. Yeah, I have talked about everything because I wrote it, you see. So it's wide in my head and now I'm just sharing it with you. So that's what I wanted to say. That if you want to change these deep parts of yourself that you think, oh God, why do I keep sabotaging myself? How come it's so hard? I really want to change, but I just keep doing the same thing. It's a program. It's like the boogeyman. You memorize it in your brain and your body, and then in your mind you say, well, I don't believe in the boogeyman, but your body still does it for you. And that's how it works. So you gotta turn off the conscious mind and get into the unconscious and start navigating that world, and then you can create change. And that is what God of Me is about. So if you haven't checked out my Patreon, please do, because there's goodies there. And if you'd like to support me there, that would be a huge blessing, and join the journey. Thank you for watching. If you're on YouTube, feel free to subscribe and like and share and all those good things, because there'll be another one of these next week. And thank you so much for sharing this with me. I appreciate it every single time. Many blessings. Much love. Bye-bye until then.